Ride Like the Wind, A Tale of the Pony Express by Bernie Fuchs. The story in this book takes place in Nevada in 1860, a time of dramatic changes in our country. Despite their strength and courage, a small band of the Paiute tribe, led by Chief Numaga, had barely survived a treacherous winter. Frontiersmen moving westward had killed off herds of bison and had cut down forests of precious nut trees. How would the Paiute live without them? Now the Pony Express Company was building stations 15 to 20 miles apart across Paiute land. Young riders carried mail from station to station, racing as fast as they could. The stations were another intrusion. Against the pleas of Chief Numaga, the Paiute warriors attacked and burned some of the stations in a futile attempt to hold back the inevitable. Yet on the settlers came men, women, and children heading westward, and with them orphan boys like Johnny Free, who also showed enormous courage and have their own stories to tell. Two hours before dawn, the sound of galloping hooves startled Johnny Free into action. In minutes, a rider would bring the mailbag to Camp Creek Station, and Johnny's leg of the Pony Express would begin. Johnny pulled on his boots and tied a holster to his thigh. Then he went outside. As soon as the rider arrived, Johnny quickly flipped the special mailbag from the rider's saddle to his own. Then Johnny and his beloved pony, Jenny Sue, bolted out of the station at full gallop. It was a bright blue moonlit night. Johnny wondered if the wolves were watching from the bluff above the clearing. He felt a kinship with the ever-present curious wolves. Like Johnny and the native Paiute people, they were survivors in this unforgiving Nevada land. Suddenly, Johnny's Paiute friend Little Gray Fox was beside him. Little Gray's pony, Pinion, was the only horse around who was almost as fast as Jenny Sue. For a few miles, they raced with Jenny Sue winning by just a hair. Then Little Gray rode off, saying goodbye with the Paiute peace sign he'd taught to Johnny Free. Halfway into the journey to Rock Spring Station, Johnny could see a yellow-orange glow on the horizon. As he sped onward in the amber haze of dawn, a black column of smoke rose dead ahead in the direction of the station. The station had been burned to the ground. Johnny knelt and picked up a blackened tin cup. He knew the men must have gone on to defend the next station, but where was the fresh pony he needed to relieve Jenny Sue? Jenny Sue nuzzled his hand, wiping away tears. Johnny knew he had to keep going with the mail. He swung himself back into the saddle, and they rode like the wind, off in the direction of Rattlesnake Station. It was a long ride, too long. Exhausted, Johnny followed the trail to a creek that dipped south, and then he stopped to share some biscuits with Jenny Sue. He stripped her of the saddle, then stripped off his own shirt. He walked her into the creek bed up to her flanks, shivering all the way, then filled his hat with water and doused her head, neck, and back. The coolness perked them both up. If need be, Johnny thought, Jenny Sue can still outrun the Paiute ponies. But what about the mail? Johnny dressed, slipped the saddle back on, and hoisted himself up. Leaving the cool creek bed, they headed west under the hot noon sun. As they rode, Johnny looked around and behind. Even Jenny Sue kept her ears pricked up and nervously pranced from side to side. Suddenly, Johnny felt them. Where or how many he couldn't tell, but the presence of the Paiute was frighteningly real. With a puff of dust behind a boulder, 7 Paiute warriors appeared as if by magic. With a slap of the reins to Jenny Sue's flank, the race was on. Arrows whistled past them. Sighting a ridge ahead, Johnny turned sharply toward it, hoping to widen his lead. Reaching the top of the ridge, Johnny was suddenly jolted out of the saddle as if hit by a thunderbolt. He tumbled down the ridge and quickly scrambled under a ledge. Unsnapping his holster, he drew his revolver. "Run, Jenny Sue, run," he shouted. The horse took off, and for many miles, the Paiute did not discover she was riderless. She ran and ran, outdistancing her pursuers, and one by one the Paiute gave up the chase. Turning back, they gathered just above the ledge where Johnny lay hiding. Cautiously, he unsheathed his knife and clenched it in his teeth. A white-hot pain shot up his right shoulder. Surely this would be a showdown. To his surprise, the sound of the pony's hooves slowly receded back over the ridge, leaving him in deadly silence. The pain in his shoulder had turned numb, and blood was running into his hand. He realized he had been hit. He yanked a piece of arrow out of his shoulder and slowly drifted into unconsciousness. Jenny Sue continued on riderless. She lost no time, and with no weight on her back, she ran even faster along the trail, the empty stirrups banging against her sides. When she finally reached Rattlesnake Station, men came running. For a moment they cheered to see the pony, but when they saw that Johnny was missing, they fell silent. They tried to hold Jenny Sue as they took off the mailbag and her saddle, but she reared up, knowing she needed to be free. Johnny was in danger. She turned and ran back on the trail. She must go find him. That run back to the rocks exhausted Jenny Sue. Where was Johnny? Surely he was in among the rocks, but she couldn't find him. She circled the rocks again. Nothing. Suddenly, there he was. All she could do was muzzle, nibble, and push the boy, trying to bring him to life. Finally, he opened his eyes and reached up to rub her nose and forehead. "Good old Jenny Sue," he said. He wondered how long he had been lying there, for the sun was lowering and turning orange. Johnny began to get up, but the sharp pain in his shoulder stopped him. Pulling on Jenny Sue's mane, he was finally able to stand and step up onto a boulder. Still holding on to her, Johnny slid his leg over Jenny Sue and pulled himself up. Slowly, with his good arm wrapped around her neck and his cheek pressed against her, they moved along as smoothly as they could so Jenny Sue would not lose him again. They made their way onto the trail back toward Rattlesnake Station, where they would find help. They were halfway there when Jenny Sue suddenly stepped sideways off the trail. Johnny looked up, and on the ridge 3 Paiutes sat on their ponies. 2 warriors began to descend in pursuit of Johnny, but the third, Chief Numaga, raised his hand. At this, the 2 stopped. Without a word from Numaga, they understood that Johnny Free and his pony were not their enemies. Then, from farther down the ridge, Johnny heard the familiar whinny of Little Gray's pony. Johnny knew they were safe and wouldn't have to run any more that day. Johnny Free's shoulder healed, and one morning, after racing Little Gray Fox, his friend gave him a gift. It was a beautiful hand-carved wolf that Little Gray had carved out of a branch of a pinyon tree. The Paiute were moving their village, and it would be the last time Johnny would ever see his friend. Not long after, the Pony Express ended. With the construction of telegraph cables, news could be sent from coast to coast in minutes. All in all, the Pony Express had lasted only 19 months. Johnny Free and Jenny Sue never left Nevada and went farther west to California to make a life at ranching. Jenny Sue gave birth to a beautiful brown and white colt that Johnny named Little Pinion, and it's fair to say that he and Jenny Sue were happy with their lives. But they always remembered their adventures on the Pony Express, and even as he grew to be an old man, Johnny told many tales about it, especially the day that Jenny Sue returned to find him and save his life.